the other side, because we saw a lot of that yesterday. We saw a lot of that yesterday. That's what I think is going on here. I think they're still going dark. Disney cruise boats? Yeah, it's probably a bunch of Disney cruise boats. Yeah, it's probably a bunch of Carnival cruise boats. Yeah, once again, Saudi Arabia has confirmed that they just, in the last 45 minutes, intercepted 6 ballistic missiles fired from Iran at Prince Sultan Air Base. These Arab Gulf nations, they've got to have enough. They've got to be pretty freaking pissed at this point. They've got to have enough at some point. How many times are you going to get shot with a ballistic missile and a suicide room? All right, I've had enough. This is Prince Sultan Air Base here, just southeast of Riyadh. Sort of central Saudi Arabia. I'm sure some of the people here in this very chat have even been here. I'm sure some of you have been here in person, in real life. We go 3D. Yep, there's our 3D view. And then these are the living quarters. Where do the people live? Well, they live over here. You even have a big soccer field. You've got 2, you've got 3, 4 soccer fields. How many soccer fields do these guys need? Well, they need even more. They've got even more up here. Good Lord. Good God. They're really out here, just in the middle of nowhere. They are out there. Football. Matt Morris, it's not soccer, it's called football. Ich liebe die Bundesliga. Mm-hmm. Soccer. Soccer. I'll tell you something here, folks. Something very curious. Is happening tonight. So we know that the U.S. has been carrying out airstrikes in Tehran. U.S. and Israel have been carrying out airstrikes in Tehran. But we've had no footage of it. We know it's been happening. No footage of it. Nothing has... We've had nothing. Which is a little bit abnormal.
Tonight, if you live in Iran, you probably want to stay underground.
Today will be, yet again, our most intense day of strikes inside Iran. The most fighters, the most bombers, the most strikes. Intelligence more refined and better than ever.
Now it's wheels up for America's deadliest weapon, the B-52 Doomsday bombers, capable of carrying 70,000 pounds of ordnance, including cruise missiles, 30,000-pound bunker busters, and even nuclear weapons. It's the first time the Doomsday has been deployed since the start of the war. This is what the president means when he says, "You ain't seen nothing yet." Iran's missile launches have collapsed by 92%. They went from launching 420 missiles a day last week to averaging just 45. We're knocking them down and blowing up the launch pads. The Iranians are also running out of friends.
Big mistake by the Iranian regime to start targeting its neighbors right away, exposing who they are and what they're all about. Indiscriminate targeting, flailing recklessly at the beginning. I can't say that we anticipated necessarily that's exactly how they would react, but we knew it was a possibility. And I think it was a demonstration of the desperation of that regime then and that regime now, that they still think their pathway out is to try to alienate their Arab partners even more, who've instead decided to come to us.
The mullahs are isolated and their proxies are biting the dust. Israel eliminated Hezbollah's commander in Lebanon. The Houthis have gone dark. And Hamas, so far, has respected the ceasefire. Meanwhile, the performance of the U.S. military, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, puts it like a poet.
Those jets are fully loaded with missiles and bombs, and they are a world-class team combined with the naval aviation and the aviators in those jets. This beautiful symphony of American spirit is the definition of perfectly organized chaos. These are dedicated young people who take the road less traveled to serve their great nation.
We've hit over 5,000 targets in Iran. Their air force is gone, their navy basically underwater. Their arsenal had to be demolished when it did, because in a few years, they would have wrapped these weapons around their nuke program, and it would have been too dangerous and too expensive for us to strike.
The regime's intention was to use this exponentially growing ballistic missile threat to make it virtually impossible to prevent them from obtaining a nuclear weapon. The situation was very quickly approaching the point of no return, and the United States found it intolerable.
Every American president since Carter has known the rogue Iranian regime was hell-bent on death to America. Obama gave them cash if they promised not to nuke up. They took the money, they nuked up and manufactured missiles. Biden told them don't, bribed them too, and they kept enriching and stockpiling missiles. Defanging Iran has been American policy for decades. Finally, Trump took action.
The president also stated from the beginning that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And it's one thing to say it. It's easy to say. Anybody can say that. I mean, Barack Obama said that. But to do something about it takes courage and resolve. But in that courage and in that resolve, you can also be very scoped in what you're trying to execute to ensure that the sacrifice of Americans, American treasure, American lives, all of those properly meet the objective that you're trying to accomplish.
The president doesn't want a forever war. Iran engaged in forever talks while they waged a forever war on us. But the president says it'll be over very soon. The remnants of the regime are begging Trump to pick up the phone for peace talks. But in public, they're talking tough. One Iranian security official told Trump, quote, "Be careful not to get eliminated yourself." They're also threatening oil exports. They say not one leader is allowed to leave the Strait. But the administration isn't playing games.
If they do anything to stop the flow of oil or goods within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the world's most powerful military 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far.
The Iranians don't have the juice to close the strait, but these threats are scaring the insurers who cover these tankers. CNN, citing anonymous sources, says what's left of the Iranian military is plotting to sink the tankers.
We have some important breaking news, and that is that CNN is learning Iran has begun laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This is according to two people familiar with the matter.
Raising Cane said don't even think about it, and bombed 16 mine-laying boats that hadn't even left the harbor. There it is. As soon as the Iranian Navy leaves shore, they get smoked like a Coke boat in the Caribbean. Today, the market's stabilized, and oil prices closed down about 9%. At $86 a barrel, down nearly $40 a barrel from yesterday's highs. The mullahs aren't going to booby-trap the strait and get away with it. 20% of the world's oil flows through there. Oil producers have other options. Shadow tankers are shutting off their radars and just sailing right through. And our allies have a backup plan. The Saudis started sending a lot of their oil north through a pipeline into the Red Sea. The strait was closed for days. It's the biggest oil disruption in history, and Trump got it reopened. On top of that, the president announced we're opening the first new American refinery in 50 years, a $300 billion plant in Brownsville, Texas, and we got India to build it. Iran, getting a little into Baghdad Bob territory, says we've got the Americans right where we want them.
He said at this point in time, Iran is gearing up for a long war. He says at this point in time, he sees no room for diplomacy whatsoever between Iran and the United States. And I found this quite interesting, that Iran is going to be the one that's going to end this war. Iran will define and will determine when this war ends. So clearly the Iranians believe that right now they are entrenched. They say that they've replenished their leadership.
The commander-in-chief slightly disagrees. He says he's in total control, ahead of schedule, and the war will end very soon. We just haven't won it enough. Their leadership's been decapitated. All branches of the military, they've been decimated, and we have full air supremacy. And their economic warfare strategy has been neutralized. And tonight, the doomsday bomber is going to pay the Iranian capital a little visit. But the Democrats say it's a quagmire. We lost.
We've got a math problem here. Regime change didn't happen. The son of the Ayatollah might be worse than the dad. The president said last summer we obliterated the nuclear weapons that they had and the uranium. That wasn't the case because now they're talking about ground operations to remove what's left. So I don't see from a strategic perspective what was accomplished.
It took us 10 years to get bin Laden, 6 years to get Hitler, 2 years to get Milosevic, 9 months for Saddam, 8 months for Gaddafi, and we blew the Ayatollah away in 50 seconds and took out the entire Iranian military in less than a week. And the Democrats say we haven't accomplished much. Former Clinton pollster Mark Penn says this, quote, "The press is a drumbeat of negativity favoring the Iran regime. It's puzzling at this point how any success is buried. The reality is likely the regime is being pummeled on all sides." Operation Epic Fury is accomplishing a mission that's been in the works for almost 50 years. Of course, there have been mistakes. Yes, there have been casualties. And yeah, oil spiked. But Americans shouldn't lie about a war. You can disagree with the war, but not the war effort. It's being exquisitely executed. The commander-in-chiefs kept the Arab alliance together, calmed the markets, reopened the strait, and demolished the world's #1 state sponsor of terror in 9 days.
I don't want to brag, but, you know, they've said this about a lot of things. No other president could do some of the I'm doing.
Missouri Senator Josh Hawley is here. So you have one of your colleagues, Senator Kelly, saying the war's not going well. How could he say that?
Well, I would just say this, Jesse. If you look at our overriding priority here, which is to deny nukes to these crazy people, how can you look at what's happened in the last year? I mean, you had Trump taking out the nukes back in June. Now you've had the last 10 days. Does anybody really think that these people are ever going to try to make a nuke again? What would they make it with? Like charcoal? I mean, this is an overriding success. Our military is astounding the world. And I agree with what the president said last night. You look at all the success that we've had in the last 10 days. I mean, this thing is a victory. I think we should be hailing our military as the heroes they are. We ought to be thanking them for their service. And we ought to be saying we've achieved our objectives here, big time.
I would like to see the press report some of this. The way Kane encapsulated it was beautiful. You know, a symphony of the American spirit. It was just, it's beautiful to behold the way these guys execute this mission under so much pressure. 24 hours a day, away from home, under fire. More needs to be said about that. Why don't we hear it?
Well, because the liberal media is always cheering for who's against America. I mean, the truth is this has been an overwhelming show of force, and our military heroes need to be celebrated. We need to salute them and their families, of course, beginning with the families of the fallen, thanking them for their service to this country. And I think what the president said last night, that we have achieved our objectives just about any way you cut it, whether it's nukes, whether it's the ballistic missiles, whether it's the Iranian Navy. I mean, all of it gone, all of it devastated. This has been a success. This military has done an incredible job. We need to celebrate them and say, job well done. I mean, if this isn't success, I don't know what would be.
The possibilities could have been horrible. I mean, you could have had oil go to 200. You could have had a mass casualty event. You could have had a devastating terror attack inside the United States that could have killed hundreds of people. We could have been stuck in a quagmire. I mean, there could have been missiles raining down on Tel Aviv, you know, tons of people being killed. None of that has happened. And war is very unpredictable. Those things could have happened, no matter how good the planning could have been. And the fact that they haven't happened, just that, the fact that it hasn't gone badly at all in war. I mean, we're almost batting 1,000 here. Do you think the president is going to look for an off-ramp or keep going?
Well, I think that he's achieved his objectives the way that he's laid them out. And you just put it beautifully, Jesse. I mean, what is there really that's left to do that we haven't already done? I mean, we have demonstrated to the world and anybody who's...
That's what I've pretty much been getting at for the past few streams now. Like, what are we waiting for at this point? I don't think anybody is left. And if they're still around, they're not going to be around very long.
What happens? If I had to guess, that's where we're going here. That Trump is going to give the Iranians an offer. Let's see what you do. I think that's the way that we're going here.
Good evening, I'm Bill Malugin, and this is your Fox News Report. Today was the most intense day of strikes against Iran since the start of the war. The Pentagon says the U.S. has now struck more than 5,000 targets, including 50 Iranian naval vessels. Iran's missile attacks also down 90%. Wall Street responding to the good news. Oil now back under $100 a barrel. 5 members of the Iranian women's soccer team have been granted asylum in Australia. The athletes have been fearing death back home after staying silent during the Iranian national anthem before a soccer match last week. Shots fired at the U.S. consulate in Toronto this morning. Witnesses there say 2 people fired handguns outside the building before driving off. Canadian officials are investigating it and are calling it a national security incident. No injuries have been reported. Travelers should head to the airport extra early with longer than usual TSA wait times due to the partial government shutdown of DHS. Airports all across the country reporting staffing strains as DHS workers, including TSA agents, prepare to miss a second paycheck this coming Friday. And millions of people across the central U.S. are bracing for another round of potentially deadly storms. It comes just days after last week's fatal tornado outbreak. From Texas to Michigan, forecasters now warning of damaging.
All right, well, I guess be careful if you're there as well. A lot of stuff going on.
I'm Kaylee McEnany, along with Harold Ford Jr., Jesse Waters, Dana Perino, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The 5. We bring you this Fox News alert. We are in week 2 of Operation Epic Fury as the U.S. military and Israel continue to decimate the Iranian terror regime at a furious clip. CENTCOM reports over 5,000 targets struck in Iran and 50 Iranian vessels damaged or destroyed. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt telling reporters that the operation ends when Iran can no longer back up their death to America threats.
10 days in, this campaign has been a resounding success thus far, and America's warriors are winning this important fight at an even faster pace than we anticipated. When President Trump says that Iran is in a place of unconditional surrender, he's not claiming the Iranian regime is going to come out and say that themselves. What the president means is that Iran's threats will no longer be backed by a ballistic missile arsenal that protects them from building a nuclear bomb in their country. And Iran chose this path to death and destruction. Iran wanted to attack the United States of America, and the president was not going to sit back and allow that to happen.
President Trump talking to Trey Yingst, laying out the rationale for the strikes on Iran. He said, quote, "No other president had the guts to do it. I don't want some president who hasn't gotten the courage in 5 years or in 10 years to go in. It's like a gunslinger where he draws his gun first." And the liberal media is having a crash out over Epic Fury by dusting off the old Russia, Russia, Russia card.
According to the Kremlin, in the middle of all that, President Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin and talked to him for an hour. And we only learned about that phone call because the Kremlin told us about it. The White House didn't announce it. The Kremlin did. Was it even in the White House calendar that today was the day Trump was supposed to check in with his boss?
Trump said the war will only stop after Iran's unconditional surrender, to which Iran replied, "That's a dream America should take to their grave." Okay, that's spooky. Iran metal as hell.
Basically, we are sending people in to lose their lives.
Yes.
Because we've seen how fighting goes.
So I was reading an old Guardian article about Maddow's history on Russia, Greg. She implied press briefings were orchestrated by the Kremlin. Never the case. I can tell you that from firsthand experience, that a strike in Syria, she concurred, might have been at the behest of Vladimir Putin and alongside him.
Do they actually believe we have no memory of the past 10 years? No one should be going to Maddow, Colbert, or The View for any kind of foreign policy or even domestic expertise. The View is actually...
Exactly. That right there. The View is the last place for any sort of expertise on anything. And Stephen Colbert is going to lose his show at some point. It's scheduled to end, so... he's not the spinning example for this kind of stuff.
Actually considered a news program by ABC. That's like considering Jimmy Kimmel a comedy show. But it's a reminder that you should, when you hear these people say things and you feel like it's penetrating you, remind yourself what their stances were on Joe Biden's competence, on Russian collusion, on trans, on crime, on Hunter's laptop, on the border. They were wrong on everything. And this is why, and this is not a great thing, but it feels like Trump has no loyal opposition. You know, nobody can take the Democrats seriously and nobody can take the media seriously because they surrendered all their credibility during the Biden years. So no one is required to take them seriously. So there's like this open road where Trump feels like he can do what he plans on doing because no one's going to take them seriously. I think I said this to you, that there's a new duopoly shaping where the legacy media, so here is the Trump White House, and this would have been the legacy media. They're gone, completely gone. And what's replacing it is independent media. So these are like the people that I actually trust, who I disagree completely with. I disagree with Greenwald, Tim Dillon, Red Scare, Joe Rogan on this topic, but they're not beholden to anybody. They're not covering for anybody. So I take their criticism to heart. It penetrates me, but nothing I get from mainstream media comes. It's like rain hitting the windshield of a Humvee. It just, I don't feel it. The media has to realize what they've done by completely abdicating their calling to their career. In terms of backing Biden and demonizing the other guy, they've left this open road. And Trump is going right through it. If the media had been honest for the past 10 years, instead of gaslighting us on all of these issues that I mentioned, they could offer credible criticism and we could listen. But they didn't, and we can't. So it doesn't matter.
You know, Dana, and you look at what's coming out of Iran. They told President Trump to be careful. You could find yourself eliminated, asked about U.S. ground troops potentially. They said, no, we are waiting for them. I mean, it's incredible.
I mean, it's a country of 100 million people and they, the IRGC, which surrounds the regime and protects them and suppresses the people, they're going to fight back. General Dan Kane said that this morning. He says, yeah, they're fighting, and I expected them to. And they might have more, more missiles hidden. That was one of the suggestions, that perhaps they're holding back to wait for something else. But the trajectory is quite amazing. What our military has been able to do to degrade the possibility or the capacity of Iran to attack their neighbors and their own people is quite extraordinary. That is nothing short of extraordinary. And of course, that includes a lot of intel, not only from our side, but from the Israelis as well. And don't forget, I think that it's important, it's not just been this past 10 days, but Iran's proxy, Hamas, made a terrible decision on October 7th, 2023, when they decided to go in, take those people, kill those people, rape those people, take those people hostage. Many of them were Americans as well. And ever since then, Israel said, okay, that's it. And
all right, let's simmer down with the language there, shall we? We're on YouTube here. Holy shit. Fox News is getting a bit crazy over here. I understand what she's getting at, but hold it there. Okay, relax.
Biden sort of slow walked Israel on this. Remember all the fights that the Biden administration had? Like, should we help them? Should we not help them? I don't know. Finally, Israel gets to the point where they did the pager attack. They killed people, not just the pagers, but it was like many other sort of amazing intel. Then President Trump gets in and says, okay, I will help you. I do not want them to get a nuclear weapon either. So he did Operation Midnight Hammer. And yet still Iran wouldn't stop. So I'm not at all surprised that they're like, oh yeah, we're so big and brave. We're going to say that the president ought to watch himself. They already tried to kill him before, and previous presidents too. And many other Americans they did kill or maim. So they're a little bit getting what they deserve. One thing I would just say that I still think is unfortunate, curious, and I hope that we get this turned around in the next 36 hours. It's that there's so little capability for the people inside Iran to communicate right now. We don't know what they're saying, what they're seeing. We don't have video from inside. They can't communicate in and out. And so that, to me, is something I would love, especially as a news organization, to be able to show people what is happening inside.
Yeah, no, that's a great point for sure. And Jesse, looking at the MAGA base, there was a lot of conversation when this happened 12 days ago. What's the MAGA base going to do? Well, there's some polling out, and it's YouGov, and you see Republicans overall moved up from 68% support Trump to 76% on this. The MAGA base, 85% support Trump. He has a lot of trust and has earned a lot of goodwill.
Yeah, you can disagree with the war, but not the war effort. We are accelerating these bombing runs, and their offensive output is collapsing. You have to look at it honestly, like these two colleagues to my left said. Everything that the Iranians have tried has failed. They tried to have a war of attrition, hunker down, let us run out of munitions and interceptors. That didn't work. They tried to hit the Arab allies. All it did was force them into America's arms. And then they tried to jack up the price of oil so the base felt the pain at the pump and the market could pressure Trump to take a knee. That didn't happen. The market is stabilized. Oil's down to $80 a barrel. And right now the strait's open. It's not completely, but they are moving tankers. And we have things we can do there. We can use ships as sentries. We could do escorts, or we could seize Karg Island and then just like turn off their revenue with a little spigot. When Trump and Hegseth say that we're only just getting started, or, oh, they ain't seen nothing yet, that's not saying the war is going to last forever. That's a psyop to the Iranians to say we're holding a lot back. We could be hitting their electrical grids, bridges, oil depots. What we're doing is that they act stupid. We're going to reserve those targets for that punishment. Right now, we're almost executing this war compassionately. This thing could be much, much bigger. The timing of the war is really intelligent because if you see the volley of these drones and ballistic missiles, imagine 5 years from now how much blood and treasure the American alliance would have to spend busting down these barrages to take out the nuclear program. Their goal was to build a shield around it so we couldn't even consider the strike. People have to be a little bit more patient. We took 10 years to nail bin Laden, 2 years for Milosevic, 8 months for Gaddafi, 9 months for Saddam. Hitler died after 6 years. We got this guy in 50 seconds. You have to acknowledge how great that was.
Yeah, a massive success, no doubt about it. And Harold, when you look at the idea of Iran getting nuclear weapons, that would essentially insulate them. You at that point couldn't attack Iran. That's why I agree with Jesse. The timing, you had to do this.
I don't think there's any doubt. It's good to be with you today as well. I'd say a couple things, and I agree with largely my colleagues to my left here. I heard General Kane this morning too, Dana, and I thought he gave the clearest, most coherent, most understandable explanation for what we're doing. And I would hope when he said we need to end their missile ballistic launch capabilities, we need to ensure, to Kayleigh's point, they get no nuclear weapon. And 3, we're knocking out the Navy and Air Force, basically eliminating their ability to have to respond militarily. Now, what I would hope is that everyone would get on the same page. Sometimes the president says that, sometimes he goes more. I disagree with you a little bit, Jesse, when I don't understand fully when the Secretary of War and others will talk outside of what the president's saying or beyond what General Kane is saying. They just need a central message. And perhaps I think some of the data, some of the polling suggests, Kayleigh, that the majority of the country, and I'm not part of that majority, is not in favor of the president. I think you have to be in favor of a president when we're at war. But I think a lot of this could be solved if the president were to give a message, a national address, and just lay all of this out. 2, I am not one that thinks you should put a timeline on it, Jesse, but the president can't say, as he did yesterday, as we sat here on this set, and it looked as if he was developing or pursuing some sort of off-ramp. and was saying that the war is basically complete. And then to hear the Secretary of War and General Kane this morning, it appears that it's not. Again, I just want clarity, and I'm one that can live with the consequences. I think many Americans, including many Democrats, can. I just hope at some point we fully understand it. Again, if it's the General Kane message from this morning, the press conference, I think Americans can rally around that, and they understand that may take a week, or it may take 4 weeks, it may take 8 weeks. And then finally, I don't know if it's smart to talk about us choosing the next leader of Iran. We didn't choose the leaders of Europe after World War II. We've never chosen the leaders of a country. I understand us not wanting a leader who wants to destroy us, but I do think it begs the question.
You know what? I have no idea what's going on at this point. The war was almost over, and yeah, I guess they ramped it back up. I don't know. We're going to see what week 2 is going to bring us. It has been pretty quiet, though, all things considered.
اگر کسی به خواست دشمن بیاد اون رو ما معترض غیره نمیبینیم، اون رو ما دشمن میبینیم و آنی میکنیم که با دشمن میکنیم، برخورد میکنیم که با دشمن میکنیم. همه بچهای ما دست به ماشه آمادن در حراست از انقلابشون، در حمایت از مردمشون و میهنشون.
Wow. So yeah, if you come out to protest, we will treat you as an enemy, and we will do to you what we want to do to enemies, which is a little bit of murder. But it doesn't really matter what he says. He's not going to have enough personnel to even carry out this massacre. And by the way, their proxies, who they were used in January to come out to carry out the massacre, they don't have enough money either. And they're also getting hammered in Iraq, in Lebanon, and those who used to be in Afghanistan and Pakistan, there are two different groups, the Fatah Mune and the other guys. They are a little bit busy because they've been hitting each other, Pakistan and Afghanistan. So they're also a little bit too busy to support the regime in Iran. Now, Prime Minister of Israel did this post on X saying that people of Iran, we are waging a historic war for liberty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you to remove the Ayatollah regime and gain your freedom. Together with the United States, we are hitting the tyrants of Tehran harder than ever. And we can confirm tonight is actually, we are witnessing the biggest wave of attacks by both the Americans and the Israelis across Iran, especially in Tehran. Last night was the biggest until tonight. And this is obviously what Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, promised over the last couple of days, that this week is going to intensify because they want to ensure that this whole counter-terrorism operation in Iran against the IRGC is finished smoothly. But obviously, it's still going to take time because these guys, you have to drag them out. Right now, they're hiding in hospitals, and it's slightly difficult to get to them directly. Now, multiple IRGC and intelligence buildings in Tabriz, which is in the northwest of Iran, have also now been flattened earlier today.
کلانتری burada ha.
Oh, that guy almost just got smoked. What the fuck is going on here? Holy shit, man. This guy on the bike here just zooming away. What a crazy situation. Let's see if we got some more footage here from up above.
Are quite successful. All these little rainbow submarines that the IRGC have had, they're all going. The smaller vessels destroyed, the warships getting destroyed, and they have no other option but to actually give up the control of the Strait of Hormuz. It's not going to happen. And we got the French on their way. So another few days, another week, and obviously things will rapidly change. We're just going to also quickly go to Tel Aviv. As I said, we have the live feed from there. And yeah, the latest round of missile
whether
attacks.
or not there might be people to deal with that might be able to get an off-ramp here. The other thing to consider is if this guy is so weak and so corrupt and wasn't even truly in line to be the next boss, maybe that's the sort of person we want to have in charge, at least for a while, because it might increase the odds of a revolution.
That's a good point. Also wondering, the fact that he accumulated so much wealth overseas must mean he's a businessman, and he kind of did it on the sly, evading sanctions, so he's wily. Does that mean he's someone we can deal with, or is he just out for blood since we slaughtered his whole family?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, right? If you have this gigantic nest egg of billions of dollars, but you lost your wife and children in the initial airstrike, probably you're going to be out for blood, as you say. The challenge is, who does he have as allies? You know, he served in the Revolutionary Guard Corps during the Iran-Iraq War, so he does have some experience at warfare, and that is really his base of power. Now, the army, the regular army, is a little more than double the size of the Revolutionary Guard Corps. But you have the Basij Corps, you have police, and so there are multiple factions within modern Iran, and it's really unclear at this point where their loyalties lay.
And you can't decimate all these guys with guns. There's militias, there's the IRGC, there's the regular army, there's all sorts of people with guns. Hundreds of thousands, if not over 1 million of them. How do you go from that to something that, you know, we could have a regular diplomatic relationship with?
Well, I should think that the Army is probably the best place to start, and some of your regional leaders. For example, just yesterday, I think I saw an announcement from the Arab minority that lives in the southwest along the Tigris-Euphrates River, pledging allegiance to the son of the former Shah and wanting to maintain an intact Iran and warning against any neighbors trying to slice away pieces of Iran. And so I don't know how much real power they have. It's very difficult to peer behind the curtain and to understand just how strong the dissension is. Clearly, it was strong enough to have some 30,000 plus people murdered by the regime last month, so we know that there's unrest. We just don't know how organized it can be. And let me lastly give a shout out to Elon Musk. You know, it's his Starlink terminals that have allowed for the opposition to communicate and to communicate with the outside world. If it wasn't for Starlink, not only would the inside opposition be terribly disorganized and disheartened, but we would probably be getting next to nothing in.
And I think we lost the rest of that segment. We have a Piers Morgan video here. I don't know what this is going to entail. I think I'm going to skip ahead because I would assume this panel of people are going to start arguing very quickly here.
Well, I mean, it's built into the question, of course, that this is all Israel's interests at play here. The great revolutionary Shiite menace is their problem, not ours. Our problem is the bin Ladenites, Al-Qaeda and ISIS, the radical Salafi edge of Wahhabi Sunni Islam and their terrorist movement, mostly America and Britain and Saudi Arabia's pet terrorists, although they oftentimes turn on us and kill us too. But the Shiites are the Israelis' problem. And even though every time America runs an errand over there to try to spite them, we end up empowering them like we did in Iraq War II. And then inadvertently, when Obama built the caliphate to spite them, we ended up, that blew up too big. So they had to take the Iranian side again in Iraq War III, which is, you know, that we have strikes going on against Shiite targets in Iraq right now because that's the regime that we put in power. You quoted David Petraeus a minute ago about tell us how this ends. Well, Iraq War II ended with David Petraeus putting Iran's best friends in power there and training up their army, the Badr Brigade, to be the Iraqi army. And that's who we got a problem with as the war spreads right now. But then secondly, as far as will the war work? No. And as far as Well, it depends on who you ask what their goals are. The Trump administration says they want stability. And they even told the Wall Street Journal, anonymous officials told the Wall Street Journal, they might be happy with the Ayatollah Khomeini's grandson. They don't like Khamenei's son. They want Khomeini's grandson instead. They have no capability, as Marco Rubio testified to the Senate. They have no one to put in power. They don't think for a minute they can parachute the monarchists in there. They don't think for a minute that the Mujahideen cult, communist terrorist cult, can take over. They don't think that the Kurdish communists, the PJAK, which are the Iranian Kurdish branch of the PKK in Turkey, they don't think that they can take over. They don't think that the Baluchi suicide bombers, Jandala, that America and Israel backed 10, 15 years ago, can take over the country. But as the Israelis told the Financial Times, that's fine. What they want to see is civil war. What they want to see is chaos and destruction and Iran taken off the board. They don't want to see a friendly new Iran, as Donald Trump said. They want chaos. They want Iran to look like Obama helped Israel turn Syria into back 15 and 10 years ago.
All right, Doran Spillman, there are many people who think that is exactly what Israel wants. They just want total chaos, a sort of rudderless Iran. That's why they're blowing up all the oil refineries. That's why their general view seems to be to cause as much mayhem as possible. What do you say to that?
Pierce, it's simply revisionist history. Listening to Jeffrey Sachs and, Scott, it's ridiculous. It ignores the reality that over the last 2.5 years and before, Israelis have been living in shelters, running in and out of shelters, attacked over our peaceful border with Gaza, received thousands of missiles from Hezbollah, thousands of missiles from the Houthis. We've been targeted in Israel and overseas, and it all leads back to Iran. It's as if Israel woke up one morning and said, we've got a great idea. Let's fly 2,000 kilometers and try to attack a country that has 95 million people, and we have 10 million people, that is 90 times bigger than Israel, put our soldiers at risk just out of the blue because Israel wants to take over the world. I mean, there's not a single shred of truth about this scenario. Let's wake up, everybody. At what point does a country have the right to defend its civilians against an enemy country that not only has said it wants to destroy you, but has launched 500 ballistic missiles in June, another series of ballistic missiles, including one that flew over my house and killed a worker in the middle of Tel Aviv today who will not go home to his family? At what point do we have the most basic right to defend our country? Should we just sit here and wait for them to keep firing and lay down and roll over? There is such absolute hypocrisy. I'm listening to Jeffrey Sachs, so Pierce, you let him speak for half an hour, and it was, so emotional. Israel's committing suicide. Well, let me ask Jeffrey Sachs and you, how do you suppose that Israel should respond to the Iranian terror threats from 4 different countries that have been attacking Israel? Should we not fight back? Should we just lay down? Is that not suicide? At the end of the day, Pierce,
thank you.
We are leading.
Thank you for proving my point. That's exactly what I said. This is Israel's problem, not America's.
As opposed
Israel's
to
not an ally of the United States.
Scott, just one second. At the end of the day, this will go down in history the exact opposite of what Jeffrey Sachs said. You have Prime Minister Netanyahu and President Trump. Mark my words, they will go down in history like Churchill and Roosevelt, who were the first ones to confront the evil that spread throughout Germany and saved the West. We are the very first ones, because there's an imminent threat against us, that are going to stop this threat before it hits American soil. It already hit Israeli soil. They will go down in history. And everybody else that decries this war will be a minor footnote of those who said we should give in to the regime. We can't defeat the regime. If this was 1945, they'd have just said, no, let's not finish off with Germany. Let's just let them reconstitute with Hitler's son, which is what Mujata is. He is Khomeini's son.
For heaven's sake.
Okay,
right.
let me bring in.
Real quick.
Hang on.
Just give me 1 second.
Hang on, Scott.
Okay.
Well, very quickly, because Daniel's been waiting patiently.
Yeah. Just very quickly, I said, this has nothing to do with America. This is Israel's problem. And he said, this is Israel's problem for 5 minutes. Yeah, that's what I said. Israel's not a state in the union. We have no treaty of alliance with Israel.
I'd like to respond. I think that the United States wants a secure Middle East. I don't think anybody wants a destabilized Middle East. When Israel, which is the United States' greatest ally, is under mortal threat, as we now see Saudi Arabia, Scott, who is the United States' supposed ally, is now also under threat. You've got the UAE, who is under threat. All of them are under threat by Iran.
Because you started a war.
The United States has the courage, and this president has the courage, Scott, beyond just protecting the U.S. troops, thousands of which have died over Iran over the last few decades, to say, you know what, I'm going to support the friends of the United States and to do the very simple act, which seems like none of you can accept, of defeating evil. Good standing up against evil. It can be defeated, and it must be defeated.
The point I would make to that, Doran, is that you're very optimistic that the regime is going to be defeated. And I think that the problem at the moment is there is no immediate sign of that happening. In fact, the opposite seems to be the case. Let me bring in Daniel
9
Levy.
days. This is not a fairy tale.
Okay.
We actually have to fight to defeat the enemy.
Yeah, but we were told a year ago, actually not even a year ago, that the attack on the nuclear installations was incredibly successful and had neutralized the threat of Iran and its nuclear capability. And yet here we are, less than a year later, launching a massive war in Iran because apparently they were, imminently about to acquire the ability for a nuclear weapon. And those two positions seem to be completely incompatible. It's like either it was neutralized last June.
Shall I force my way in?
Okay, but it's stretching. It is stretching.
Shall I force my way in, or?
Yeah, Daniel. Let me bring in Daniel. Daniel, you've been very patient. Thank you. Over to you.
First, I'm struggling right now over this definition of evil. I saw a country lay waste to Gaza. I've seen a country that occupied Palestinians. October 7th was a crime. But what about the decades in which Palestinians lived under a brutal occupation, a regime of structural apartheid? And then I look at what was done subsequently, and I'm shaking, because when I hear these glib comparisons to the Holocaust and to the Nazi regime, I feel it's a form of cheapening, almost of Holocaust revisionism. I'm quite confident that the Jewish population in Germany was not keeping the Germans under a brutal occupation for decades. What a horrible analogy to draw, to call this some kind of Holocaust. Now, first of all, if one's talking about evil, what we have witnessed in Gaza should be painful and shameful to anyone who has grown up in a tradition which respects and values Jewish life and which considers never again to not be a parochial call, but a universal global call. Now let's come on to the subject at hand, which is what is going on with Iran. Iran didn't attack Israel. Iran hasn't attacked Israel. I wish I could say that Israel hadn't attacked Iran, but as in your expressions of astonishment are wonderful, but they belie a revisionist view of history. The attack in June,
on Tel Aviv.
The attack in June was initiated by Israel. The attack earlier this earlier this year, was initiated by Israel. And my question is twofold. First of all, is this extreme ambition, extremism, this maximalism, likely to play out well for Israel? And what do we think is going to happen as this plays out, as Mr. Horton just suggested, with the US? Because I would argue that you have an Iran that has a strategy, and you have an Israel that has a strategy. It seems very clear, very transparent, that the Israeli strategy is not some fairy tale of a happy new regime coming into place. It is precisely regime collapse, state implosion, dismantlement, and chaos. Why? Because Israel has been very clear that it has an agenda of regional domination here. Why does it need an agenda of regional domination? Because that's not about security. We can come back and talk about that. But that is central to the notion of a zero-sum endgame versus the Palestinians. I think the Iranians have come into this with strategic with strategic coherence. This time around, they've changed their national security posture and said, if this is going to be done against us, if this kind of a war is going to be launched against us, we will make it costly. We will establish a deterrence, and we will challenge the notion that America can stay cost-free in the West Asia region. The worry I have, amongst others, is that the party Israel is relying on, I don't think, has a strategy whatsoever. America used to go to wars that were often problematic for the world, for those who suffered, for America itself, with some degree of competence and coherence, some degree of a multi-layered interagency process. Today, I think you have rank incompetence and incoherence. And on any given day, the question is, what is this about? You can make a geopolitical case. You could say this is
Daniel,
about
let me
oil.
ask you this.
If I can finish just this one thought, Piers, I'd be appreciative.
Yeah.
You could say
Very sure.
this is about a chokehold, like they see Greenland in geopolitical, geoeconomic terms, about oil. But you can also hear them talking about capitulation. You can hear them suggesting this could be a Venezuela 2.0. You can perhaps hear people saying
Who's the they?
that
I'm
this
sorry. Who's the they, Daniel?
the spokespeople of the administration that is carrying out this
Which
illegal
administration?
war, Mr. Spielman. So
Which administration?
I would suggest that this could end in a couple of days, or it could go on indefinitely. But what you have here is Iran has not tried to say we will escalate toe-to-toe with Israel and the US. They have said we will go vertical. We will expand the theater of war and make this a question, not of military capacity, where the balance of power is clear, but of political endurance. And if you go into war, not like Afghanistan, if you're America, with 90% public support, not like Iraq, with 70% public support, but with barely 30% public support, bipartisan, criticism inside MAGA, your economy taking the stress, then the question of political endurance, which I think will decide this, I don't think looks good from an American and by extension, Israeli perspective.
Let me jump in. Okay, let me jump in. I mean, I would say the political stroke economic part of this cannot be understated because the economy is getting shredded globally. Oil and gas prices are absolutely rocketing. No one can get through the Strait of Hormuz pretty much without Iran say so. So this is a very perilous moment for the global economy, I would say, notwithstanding the military part of this, where the strategy of Iran has been just to scattergun attack its neighbouring Gulf states because they know that by effectively doing that, and the way that they've been doing by targeting hotels and airports and so on, they are acting as a massive deterrent to people who are not naturally born in those states to want to go back to wherever they came from. You've seen lots of Brits go back to Britain, for example, because they suddenly think that this safe oasis is not as safe as they thought. But let me just ask you one question, Daniel, before I go to the others for their response to what you said. And it's this: when you said that Iran has not attacked Israel, and the two examples you cite were indeed retaliatory, but surely that ignores the reality, which is for decades the Iranian regime, which has publicly talked about being wedded to the annihilation of Israel, and here the chance of death to America at the same time, and has killed lots of Americans and Israelis. But the part you're missing, which I'm really curious about your response to, is that surely you would accept that by propping up and supporting with arms and lots of cash Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, they have been attacking Israel relentlessly for decades, but doing it through their proxies. And that is, to me, that is the same thing. Whether they're doing it directly or whether they're doing it through proxies, they have been attacking Israel. Now, you might have concerns about the way Israel has responded, and I would share many of those concerns. I've expressed them. But no one can persuade me that Israel isn't fundamentally justified in trying to defend itself from the tentacled attacks by the Iranian regime through its proxies for many, many years.
So I'm not going to carry the brief for the Iranian governing structure and what it has set out to do. What troubles me is
What does that mean?
if
I'm
you
sorry.
apply-
Daniel, what's your answer to Pierce? What does that mean? Just answer the simple question. Do you consider the fact that Iran has funded and trained Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Houthis to kill Israelis an offense?
So here's
are they
my
actually
response,
attacking
if you
Israel,
shut
or
up
are
and
they
listen.
some parallel vertical regime? What's your answer?
Here's my response. I would consider it highly problematic if the response to Israel's genocide against the Palestinians, if the response to Israel being led by a war criminal with an international criminal court arrest warrant against his name, if the response to that would be an attempt to wipe the Israeli Jewish community off the map. Israel is a nuclear. Israel is a nuclear.
Daniel, you're
Israel is
sidestepping
a
it.
nuclear.
Daniel, is there any point at which you think Israel is justified in carrying out military intervention at all? Wait, give me one instance. Is there any moment? Is there anyone?
You see, when you can't, if you can't listen to a response to your argument,
Daniel,
are we just going to shout over each other?
No, I'm
Okay,
trying to ask
can
you
I
a
now
real question because I don't understand
Can you
your answer.
shut up and I'll answer Pierce's
Whoa,
question?
Daniel, take it easy. Take it easy now. We don't have to get overly upset.
Well, I think this is
Okay, Daniel, let Daniel answer the question. Let Daniel answer the question.
So I think the fact that Israel has maintained control of the sovereign skies of Lebanon, violated Lebanese sovereignty for decades, the fact that Israel has maintained a vicious, violent occupation against the Palestinians does not mean that the solution is a military solution. I think we should eschew and avoid war. And war in this instance was avoidable. Iran was manageable, not through kinetic military means. I don't think this is going to make the Jewish population of Israel or anywhere else even safer. I think quite the opposite. It will be more dangerous. Israel is going to have to step back from its illegal criminal activity. Iran should step back from its illegal criminal activity. And I would suggest that the way to do that is not by bombing schools, whether they're in Gaza, in Israel, or in Iran. I would suggest the way you do that is you pursue other options. And if anyone told me that Israel, as a nuclear power, which has attacked Iran, not been attacked by Iran, where Iran's so-called proxies were more of a deterrence than an offense, that Israel is more than capable of handling itself militarily, but apparently absolutely incapable of handling itself politically and of having a diplomatic game.
It sounds like you're defending Iran and persecuting Israel.
Sorry, I'm not defending Iran, but it sounds a heck of a lot like you're defending Israeli genocide.
So
my question to you, Mr.
Daniel, is there a
Spielman, is,
single
are you
moment,
ashamed and are you against the Israeli genocide
Daniel,
of the Palestinian
I'm trying to
people?
ask a question. Can I just ask one
Sorry,
question?
I didn't realize that was your job.
I
but
promise I'll
fine.
be quiet.
I didn't
Daniel, is there a
realize the gentleman on the-
single moment at which you think Israel is justified in carrying out military intervention against one of the enemies that are facing it, Hamas, Hezbollah, or Iran? Is there a single instance?
Yes, but I do not think
What
that
is it?
Israel is going to succeed militarily
what is
if the premise of its position is we will continue to manage a permanent illegal occupation against the Palestinians. If you
I understand, but we weren't occupying
sorry,
Gaza.
because you are therefore in a belligerent state in the region. Israel has bombed several countries in the
We were
region.
attacked
Israel
on October
hasn't
7th.
tried
You said it
the
was a
other
tragedy.
path.
What should we have
Sorry?
done after October
All right.
7th, Daniel?
Let me bring in.
Before October 7th,
All right.
No, but what
Gentlemen,
after they attacked us,
that's the
Daniel,
question.
should we not
Gentlemen,
do
I'm just going to call a
Go
timeout.
ahead.
Let me call a timeout because Scott has been waiting very.
Let me call a timeout. He can't even fucking handle his own show. Holy Christ.
ABC News is reporting Iran may be activating sleeper cells outside the country, according to an encrypted transmission that was intercepted by the United States. President Trump's lacing the left for tying the hands of the agencies responsible for monitoring threats like this.
Has Iran activated any sleeper cells inside the U.S.? There's reports that they have pressed that trigger button to activate those cells, at least abroad.
Well, they've been trying for a long time. We've been very much on top of it. One of the things we have to do is get the Democrats to stop the Democrat shutdown, because, as you know, the apparatus that looks into that.
Speaking of terror cells, CNN is trying to play off those ISIS wannabes in New York who tried to use an IED packed with screws and deadly chemicals to murder dozens and level a city block. They tweeted, then deleted this. Two Pennsylvania teenagers crossed into New York City Saturday morning for what could have been a normal day enjoying the city during abnormally warm weather. But in less than an hour, their lives would drastically change as the pair would be arrested for throwing homemade bombs during an anti-Muslim protest outside of Mayor Zohran Mamdani's home. CNN later cleaning that up, saying the phrasing failed to reflect the gravity of the incident. It was almost poetic, Greg.
I'm trying to think of how they would have described 9/11 now. Like a group of young pilots unhappy about their lifestyles.
On a beautiful sunny day.
On a beautiful sunny day in September. That is the funny thing about how they did this. They separated the actor from the action with like 3 different sentences. I broke it down here. So they begin, this is the trick. The sentence begins with 2 Pennsylvania teens. Then they pile in all this stuff. They mention their journey, the wonderful warm weather, the time it took, an hour, and then the life-changing moment when they were arrested. Then you get to the part throwing homemade bombs. By the time you get to the throwing of the homemade bombs, you're not sure whether you just read a crime or a short story in the Atlantic. You got to ask, though, why was it deleted? Did they delete it because they realized it was idiotic or because people mocked it? Because this is where CNN is. They have lost the plot. They don't know what is good or bad anymore. They got to close that thing down and reopen it again. Do it like, when a restaurant gets food poisoning. Or when they find a roach infestation. Just shut it down, block up the windows, reopen under a different name, CNNG. I don't know what you call it. But they also should have factored in what would have been, how the story would have been if they actually succeeded. Yep. How would their coverage have been if these douchebags had actually killed a bunch of people? The only reason why they could do that portrayal is because these guys were incompetent. They had the luxury of them being incompetent. And I think if these two turned out to be trans, CNN wouldn't even have covered it at all.
I mean, you're right. It's like they wrote it like it was 2 trans guys going for brunch on a beautiful morning. And when they got bombed.
Yes.
And they just happened to get in with the wrong crowd and made a bad decision.
It's Pennsylvania that did it to them.
Well, I was disturbed by a couple of things. One was that one of the lawyers for these two said, oh, yeah, I never met him. He had no idea who he was. And I was like, I understand that's a lawyer. Lawyers at the table. I mean, maybe they're trying to figure out a way to best help their client. But if I were Democrats on Capitol Hill and responsible for the Democratic shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, when we have activated Iranian sleeper cells around this country, I would say, we got to figure out a way to cut a deal tomorrow. And we have to help the air travelers, yes, but we have to figure out a way to make sure that our men and women in law enforcement and intelligence have everything they need, because they're teenagers, right? Well, where had they gone? They had traveled to Turkey. They had traveled to Saudi Arabia. They had gone away. What did their social media look like? I know that we can't be on top. We can't necessarily know everything that everyone is doing all at once. But if we can connect dots, it will help us prevent this from happening. These guys wanted to kill someone. That's why they're likely to spend perhaps the rest of their life in prison. Because, if they're lucky. Maybe you're right. There's something else could happen to them along the way. As to the CNN thing, I just feel like editors matter, and the industry is changing a lot, and you got to put resources where it really matters, because there's so much disinformation out there right now that if you want to be a trusted brand, then you have to figure out a way to knock this stuff down before it gets deleted. But I'm glad they deleted it.
Kaylee, someone should ask Mamdani, should the Democrats open DHS? If I'm Mamdani and I just got sworn in and then I almost died from a bomb, I'd say open this government up.
Without question. And this comes after Austin. It's like we all forgot about Austin, where Americans literally died. The guy had the ISIS flag. And this is all just in the recent period. You would think Democrats would say, let's solve this. You have millions of individuals who came to this country unvetted during the Biden administration. You had 2 million gotaways. You had 400 people encountered on the southern border on the terror watch list. All of that happened. Trinidad Aragua came over. MS-13 came over. These people are still in our country. And to think some of them could be motivated by a situation like this, it's a really hot time period on the world stage. We need the Department of Homeland Security open. And I don't think people quite understand. It's not just immigration they deal with. It is CISA, that is the cybersecurity of the United States. It is TSA. We all remember 9/11. It is Secret Service, as the Iranians say that they want to take out Donald Trump again. We just heard that last block. Open DHS, why you wouldn't. It's just naked political partisanship above national security.
Should it be open?
Should. I think that if both sides are being irresponsible here, and I say both sides, Democrats, some blame the Democrats, some blame the Republicans. The Republicans control both chambers. But if I were the president, I'd bring them all to the White House and say, we've got to at least fund the 2 or 3 agencies that are most critical here because we have a problem. I'd love if you would fund them all, and if we only do it for 60 days, and let's figure out, I'm committed to doing some of the things you guys want. If you're willing to do some of the things I want, let's get this done. 2, the intelligence sharing between, I think
absolutely wild stuff going on. That is going to do it for the 8 p.m. Eastern Standard stream. Thank you all for joining on YouTube, Rumble, and Kick. I will be live once again tomorrow for 2 p.m. and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard. I don't know. Maybe this war will wrap up soon. Maybe not. I have no clue. Maybe it'll go on for the rest of the year. Hopefully not. Anyway, adios, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or night.
I think Paul Morrow is one of the strongest and smartest voices around these kind of issues, and I listen to him closely. The intel sharing, the elevating of the threat posture, the utilization,